Detective Staff Sgt. Ajay Chevli is with the Saskatoon Police Service. I've invited Detective Sergeant to come here and talk a little bit about fraud and the economic woes that sometimes we face in our community. So, Detective Sergeant Chevli, thank you for taking time today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Nice to be on the show.
I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, economic activity in an illegal sense. Maybe can you open that up and talk a bit about what you're experiencing out there in the department and what types of investigations you do?
Certainly. The Saskatoon Police Service has a number of investigative units, General Investigative Services, Major Crime, Economic Crime Unit, which is what I'm the section head of, and I work with 6 officers in that unit. The files that we see are specifically dealing with frauds, and the frauds that we're looking at include everything from investment fraud, tax fraud in the same of a tax scam, immigration scam, credit and debit card scams, romance scams, checks written that there's not enough funds in the account, but a person's still passing on these types of fraudulent checks or counterfeit currency as well. Those are the type of files that we see in our unit.
When you look at 6 officers, I mean that to me sounds like a lot. So that must be indicative of the amount of time that it takes to pursue a lot of this then?
Certainly. Frauds are very complicated. You can, geographically, they can be so widespread. Many of the internet-based crimes that we look at, for example, the tax scams, they originate anywhere around the world. And so when you try and determine the root source of where that's coming from, it's an enormous amount of hours can go into those kind of investigations. In addition, when we're looking at, for example, an internal theft at a business or something to that effect, when you're combing through boxes and boxes of documents, almost like a forensic account to find the frauds, it can be quite challenging and resource draining.
You mentioned romance scams. Is that common, or is it something new because of the internet, or had that always been something that people have preyed on?
Well, I've been in the unit for almost 3 years as a section lead, and what I've learned is that romance scams are probably the second highest in the terms of the amount of dollar value that they can swindle out of somebody. Most of our victims are females, 40 to 70 years of age. There are some men that are also victims of romance scam. And in my opinion, I believe that they'll be underreported in the sense that as a victim of being involved in a romance scam, you're going to be really cautious and quite upset and embarrassed about coming forward to the police. Sure. I do encourage people to come forward if they have been a victim of a romance scam or if they suspect something odd. Most of those offenses start on a regular dating site, and then the conversation quickly moves to a private chat room or a platform of some sort. And then the scam artists, who you will never see, promises all sorts of affection and love and so forth, promises of I'm coming to see you, but they never show up. And little by little they groom you to extract the dollars from you, and maybe a little bit at a time, and as soon as they feel that you're ready to extract you for more money, they'll ask for the bigger dollars. So.
News to me, I find it very fascinating, and like you say, I guess the embarrassment of that should still encourage you to come forward.
Absolutely,
and share
absolutely,
that with you.
Yes.
So the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, what happens there in a scam with them? And I shouldn't say with them, with people pretending to be them.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about the CRA scams, the one thing I want to make clear with regards to all scams, it doesn't matter if someone is still in grade 10 or someone's got 2 PhDs, because I've seen victims from both spectrums fall prey to the same scam. And with CRA scams, the callers are quite pushy. They're aggressive. They're threatening in the sense that, you know what, the police are coming now if you don't pay up these back taxes. And they want you to pay in the terms of using, for example, iTunes cards, Steam cards. It's like almost an unregulated currency, very similar to Bitcoin, where there's no regulated bank that's in charge of that. And so you're forced to go out, buy these cards, redeem the numbers, and then these cards which have monetary value are redeemed on the other end by the scam artists immediately. As we've had conversations with Apple to say, hey, what happened with these cards when they were redeemed? But the important thing to note is that when you are on the phone with some of these individuals, they try to keep you from getting off the phone. So they want to make sure that you're not talking to somebody else that might say, wait a minute, I've heard of these types of activities, but lo and behold, here in our city, I probably see 2 to 5 files a week, anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 per victim. So I would really like to educate the public as to if when you're getting these CRA type of phone calls and they're asking for money, the regular CRA doesn't do that. They're asking you to pay through a bank or through the proper channels through their website. And you're not going to be getting phone calls to demand money nor to be arrested.
So if they tell you the police are coming, you can say, let them.
Let them, yes.
What when we look at theft and fraud, it's not just what you would typically think of someone on the street. There can be the ATMs or something a little more, I guess, personal in that nature.
Right.
Like you mentioned, the business employee theft or things of that nature.
Yeah. So the big difference between theft and fraud is when you're talking about an ATM. In theft, you have somebody who's not willing to part with their property. So if I own a nice car and it's in my garage, I'm not willing to part with it and have it stolen. That would be theft if somebody stole it. If somebody came along and said, hey, I'm interested in buying that, or somehow I get deceived and I part with my property, I'm willing to part with it because I'm expecting something in return. That's fraud. Internal thefts, internal fraud with a business particularly, can be quite damaging to many businesses, and specifically when you have the advent of the internet and people's emails can be hacked. People act on emails thinking that they're talking to somebody within the organization saying, I need you to send this wire transfer immediately. So somebody in the accounting department will act on that email from the boss thinking, you know what, if I can do this for the CEO, I can look good in their eyes. When in fact they're acting on an email sent to them by a scam artist somewhere around the world, and money is being transferred over and over and over through a number of banks. With a lot of other businesses, you could have, an internal employee who's stealing money. They're manipulating the cash register or the inventory or something to that effect.
I guess in my mind, I'm thinking as you're speaking, if you're having someone that is forwarding and sending you emails, would it be prudent just to delete those or not open them, or just wait and see if you get another one to see if it's a legitimate type of ask?
Right. Sometimes people receive emails from somebody that they know, and it might be very cryptic in the sense, hey, good to see you, open this.
Sure.
But if that's not the usual way of sending you an email, you need to be cautious. Never ever open on a link that you're not aware of, because what'll happen is the other party could install a spyware, malware on your computer and start looking at what you've got on your computer with respect to your banking information. The other part of that is that if you unsubscribe to a link, then what you've done is you verified your email address as being proper to a scam artist. You're better off to never open but immediately delete. And if your computer is having a lot of issues where you're receiving lots of emails of fraudulent or suspected fraudulent nature, it's probably best to have it professionally cleaned.
I won't be able to sleep well tonight after this interview. I guess I'm thankful on one hand that the department is doing that, but it's got to take a tremendous amount of resources. It's still policing and keeping us safe. What do you see as the next kind of future in the next 18, 24 months of how can people be aware and what can they do personally? I think everyone has to take some responsibility for their own actions. How do we as citizens protect our information and mail and email? Mm-hmm. What should we do?
No, you bring up a very good point. What I'd like to do is to educate the public as best as possible. First of all, if you have mail coming to your house with respect to bills, etc., get it online, so that you don't leave yourself vulnerable to having paper mail in your mailbox, which can get stolen. If you own a vehicle and at the end of the day you're leaving your wallet and your purse in there, and your windows get broken and that identification gets stolen, unfortunately, your identity could be compromised. We're not so much worried about the tap feature of your card being utilized till the bank catches on and cancels it. But what's more concerning is your identification can be used anywhere in Canada. Credit can be opened at any vendor, for example, Rogers Phone or Best Buy in BC, with your fraudulent identification. It's important to note that if you're doing online banking, be cautious about using free Wi-Fi at an internet cafe or a free computer someplace, because there could be keystroke loggers. So be cautious about inputting your passwords. Use strong passwords with the letters, numbers, symbols, things to that effect. And if you have mail that you're throwing out, make sure we shred it, that you don't just throw it out, because somebody's going through that mail and could find something quite valuable in it. These are just some of the small things you can do to protect yourself. And quite regularly check in with TransUnion and Equifax. They're the Canadian credit agencies, to see if anybody's found any information and been using your identity to obtain credit somewhere else. And that's
I don't have to worry because you're on the job and going to catch all these people.
We're going to do our very best. We are.
If people do want to get more information, where would you guide them to, or to look for more information about this?
The Saskatoon Police Service has a really good website, so we do talk a lot about the most common types of scams. Also, if you go to the Competition Bureau, the little black book of scams, there's some really good information about what the most current scams are and how to protect yourself. I encourage everyone to take a moment to read through some of that, because there's some very helpful, very relevant tips about how to protect yourself so you don't become a victim.
Due diligence. I do appreciate your time, Detective Sergeant. I wish you all the best, and go get them.
Thank you. All right.
Right on. Thank you. We'll be right back.